demise in 1876. The cards Wild Bill held in his hand during his final moment on Earth are etched into poker history.
While he's playing, a man named Broken Nose Jack McCall strolls in, walks up to where Hickok is playing and shoots him. Hickok falls over dead, and they see that the cards he's holding are aces and eights. It's a two-pair aces and eights. That's been known as the dead man's hand ever since.
Hickok's death intersected with a rising temperance movement in the U.S. that ultimately would lead to prohibition and the banning of gambling in all but 2 states in the early 20th century. But poker survived, even at the White House. For example, FDR liked nothing more than his nightly martini and a good game of poker with his friends on Capitol Hill. In the final days of World War II, President Harry S. Truman played poker 12 hours a day with journalists while returning from the Potsdam Conference on board the USS Augusta. By the end of that journey, he had decided where to drop the world's first atomic bomb, perhaps guided by one of his most famous sayings displayed on his desk in the Oval Office. The buck stops here.
The item that was used to denote who was the dealer was called the buck. If you didn't want to deal, you could pass the buck. He would be dealing the cards. He would be in charge.
The start of Richard Nixon's political career was reportedly staked by his skill with the deck.
Nixon was an excellent poker player. He played when he was in the armed forces during World War II and supposedly came home with quite a bankroll.
The $8 grand Nixon won was just enough to pay for his first run for Congress. But Nixon's bankroll paled next to Doyle Brunson, who bled the state of Texas dry in the 1950s. And Brunson wasn't the only one scoring big south of the Mason-Dixon line. 600 miles to his east, a player named Puggy Pearson was cleaning out the state of Tennessee almost single-handedly. How good was Puggy? He'll be the first to tell you.
I was the best, still am. What makes me the best is because, you know, I think like I said, know more about the human animal than any living entity has ever been on this planet.
Walter Clyde Pearson was born in 1929. He received his nickname thanks to the shape of his nose. I'm
a hillbilly from the hills of Tennessee. I got 9 brothers and sisters and mom and dad, 11 of us all together. And the way I put it, every time the rent come due, we had to move. So it was root hog or die for me all my life. We moved into about 19 different places until I was like 9 years old. I met people from all levels and walks of life from the time I was a young whippersnapper to today. And that's why I know so much about the human animal.
To Puggy, it didn't matter what the game was. Poker, pocket billiards, golf, whatever. As long as there was wagering, Puggy wanted in. In the 1950s and 60s, Puggy plied his knowledge of the human animal to every big producer in Tennessee at the same time that Doyle Brunson and his gang were making their rounds in Texas. It was only natural that the two men would cross paths.
Who's the player that I respect most? Well, I hate to say, you know, and chances are it'd have to be somebody like Doyle.
By the late 1960s, Puggy and Doyle decided to look for greener pastures, as in U.S. currency green. And so another great migration west began. This time, the stop was Reno, Nevada.
They had what they called the Texas Gamblers Convention. It was where a guy named Tom Moore had the Holiday Inn in Reno, and he invited all the top poker players that he knew around the country to come up and spend a week, and he comped the rooms and the food and everything, and we just went up there and we played.
And he called me, he said, Puggy, why don't you get some of them old heads and bring them up here and help me start this poker? A lot of live ones up here, he said. We started driving up there and got lost and headed into California. Got on up there anyway. I found out it was so juicy and all around here. This is where I stayed.
Then they headed down the road to a desert town called Las Vegas. It was in the 1960s and Vegas was hopping. But there was no place on the Strip for poker. Unlike almost every other game of chance, poker played with no seat at the table for the house. No seat, no money for the house. But all that was about to change when Doyle Brunson, Puggy Pearson, and their boys came to town in 1968.
Like I tell people, I was a strawberry picker back when I was a young whippersnapper in Tennessee. But the berries only got ripe in the springtime. And I came to Vegas and I found out there's ripe the year round, so here I stayed.
With the help of the Texas Rounders and a visionary entrepreneur named Benny Binion, the game of poker was about to conquer Las Vegas and the rest of America. It's midday. The players in Doyle Brunson's high-stakes game are deep into the action. Doyle's got something he likes and raises. Chip is still in, and Daniel Negreanu stays with the big boys. Chip decides to fold, and it's down to Doyle, Chow, and Daniel. There's a $50,000 raise. Is Doyle playing a solid hand with confidence, or has he glimpsed a tell?
At the level I play at, players are so good and they're so sophisticated that it's hard to get a tell on the top level players.
He will never know for sure what cards Chow and Daniel held. They both decide to fold, and Doyle claims the pot.
To exist at the top of the poker ranks, you have to be a stellar mathematician. You have to be an expert profiler of people. And you have to have simply more guts than anyone you've ever known.
No Limit Poker, above all else, is a game of guts. Doyle Brunson, as well as his cohorts, the legendary Texas Rounders, were able to bleed Texas dry in the 1950s for one reason. They had the guts to go eye to eye with both bullets and bankruptcy and rake in the pot without blinking once.
Gets down to me and him, I'm going to lay a price on me. I'm taking it. Well, he's got it, is all I say.
But their toughness paled in comparison to Benny Binion's. Binion was the man who lured them away from Texas and brought them to Las Vegas. The man who put his name on a casino.
He was a tough son of a gun. He wouldn't take no crap off of nobody. He came up that way down in Texas.
More than any other man, dead or alive, Benny is responsible for taking poker out of America's smoky back rooms
Turn card is an ace.
and turning it into the household name and billion-dollar game it is today.
Sure. Ace is full of 7 for Mr. Dan here.
Benny Binion was born in Texas in 1904, the son of a rancher who never could figure out how to run a business. Young Benny took over as the family's breadwinner. He was 12 years old.
He became the leader of the family at a very early age. He started gambling. He started in the numbers business first, and he became the boss of Dallas.
As Al Capone was to Chicago and Meyer Lansky was to New York, Benny Binion was to Dallas. He was the Texas godfather, and as ruthless to his enemies as he was embracing to his friends. Doyle Brunson, Amarillo Slim, and the rest of the Texas Rounders were all familiar faces at Benny's tables.
Benny was kind of like a dad to all of us. He would advise us, you know, and at least to me, you know, he was really a special person.
He had a great personality, and he was had a great sense of humor. So he was very likable, outstandingly likable.
But Binion's mounting criminal record, he was convicted of 2 murders, avoiding jail time for both, and suspected of countless more, put a ticking clock on his time in Texas. The Texas Rangers had orders to kill Binion on sight. Not arrest him, kill him. So, with $2 million packed in a suitcase, Binion headed for Vegas. He immediately became a partner in the Las Vegas Club Casino.
Since Benny Binion had recently moved from Texas to Las Vegas, he naturally brought the game that he and his cronies were most familiar with, and that was No Limit Texas Hold'em. People like Johnny Moss, Amarillo Slim, Doyle Brunson. This is the crowd, the Texas road gamblers who were used to playing a no-limit game and moving from town to town one step ahead of the law.
At the time, poker wasn't played in Vegas because there was no chance for the house to make big money. The players' money all went to each other. But Binion saw something the other owners didn't. No Limit Texas Hold'em. He had a hunch that people would be so enthralled just to watch No Limit Hold'em, they would hang around at Binion's